Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Call a roll, please.
Mike Curtis.
Here.
Amber Brown. Jerry Sartain.
Here.
Joe Machado. Gary Farley.
Here.
Renee Curtis.
Here.
Zane Cantrell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
You have the minutes of our July the 13th meeting. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes?
Move be approved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion they be
And a
approved.
second.
Have a second. Call a roll, please.
Mike Curtis.
Yes.
Amber Brown. Jerry Sartain. Gary Farley.
Yes.
Renee Curtis.
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes. The first item of business we have is a giant garages. They're asking for relief from a maximum lot coverage standards and the minimum unit size. Well, what do you have? And this is in a light industrial zoning. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what do you have on it?
Thank you. BZA 2022-18 involves the property at 611 East Jefferson Pike. They are seeking variance relief from the maximum lot coverage standards and maximum unit size established for mini storage facilities for a property located in the light industrial zoning district. So this is the property in question. Currently, it is vacant. It is surrounded by, you've got a residential use. You've got another mini storage facility with open RV and boat storage. This is a vacant site being used for something that has not been permitted. You have a church and a landfill across the street and obviously the baseball fields. And the applicant plans to develop the 7.84 acre site as a mini storage facility. Mini storage facilities are a permitted use in the light industrial zone, so we're not considering the use tonight, but we are considering the request of the applicant to increase the maximum unit size. The zoning ordinance has specific standards for mini storage facilities, and we've seen mini storages come before you in the past, and those standards have been expressed in the staff reports. But the specific standard that the applicant would like relief from is the standard that limits each unit to 500 square feet. And the applicant indicates that because it's their intended use to allow people to store RVs and boats enclosed, provide enclosed storage, most RVs and boats, they need more area than your typical mini storage unit. The second request that they are seeking is to develop the site with a lot coverage of 64%, and they are indicating the reason for needing the 64% is because of the expansive paving that's required for the traffic circulation of RVs and larger vehicles. They feel that they need allowance for more lot coverage. Now, staff considered the application against the criteria for variance approval, and the application failed to meet all of the criteria. There was no obvious hardship. It's a vacant lot. They're starting from scratch. So that's, there are a couple criteria that they do meet, or they won't cause or impair the surrounding area. We have received one informational call, and that informational call was from the pastor of the church 2 doors down, and he indicated he had no problem with the request. These are photos of the site. Now, obviously, if they get approved, they are actually going through site plan review right now, and they were allowed to submit knowing that the decision of the board would be made before the actual planning commission meeting considering the site plan. But they were cautioned in that if the request was denied, they would have to redesign their site. So when they go through, or as they go through site plan approval, we're going to look to see if the request meets all of our setbacks, all of our landscape requirements, screening requirements. But right now, the current site plan is showing the 64%, and if they are denied tonight, they will have to redesign the site. These are additional photos of the surrounding area. This is the conceptual plan that was provided by the applicant, showing the layout of the units, the drive areas on the site. And that concludes our presentation.
I have a question. So just to clarify for my own information, from what I read here and your discussion, they failed to meet, this is a self-created. There's nothing about that property that is strange.
No, there's nothing about the property, the physical conditions, that would limit the ability to develop the property in a manner that's consistent with the underlying zoning district.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, in case someone is here for the Jennifer Miranda child care, that has been withdrawn. So,
Item C has been withdrawn.
okay, thank you.
Daniel, I have a.
Do we have anyone here representing this request? If you'll come around. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just a point of clarity. They are looking to do a mini storage facility, and it's located, 851 is a storage facility as well.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Come on now. Yes, thank you. If you have any additional information you'd like to share with the board, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Danny Womble. I'm the project engineer. My address is 216 Brentwood, Centerview Drive, Brentwood, Tennessee. And Mr. Chairman, I feel very strange with my back to you.
No, that's fine.
I apologize for that. I have been provided a copy of staff's report. I've reviewed the report. I appreciate the work that staff put into the report. You have a great staff that really reviews every detail of the submittal, and I appreciate that. Of the 8 items that are standards that we looked at from your regulations, I interpret the staff report as stating that out of 4 of those items, we have no disagreement between our submittal and staff's review. So I'm going to just skip over those because of I don't want to waste your time. I'll focus on the 4 items that we don't agree on. So the first one is item number 1 in the report, where staff finds that there were no conditions related to physical surroundings, shape, topography, conditions of the specific property. And basically, this piece of property, as you can see on the aerial photograph, is undeveloped and has been for a long time. There are physical features to the property that limit the development of the property. On the back, there's a creek, there's buffers to the creek, there's floodplain, there's floodway. Also, the soils are very poor soils, and they limit the uses that can be made of the property as well, from a standpoint that there's no sanitary sewers available, and a septic system would have to be used. There's no good soils on the property for a septic system. There is an easement for a system off the property behind it. I only point this out just to say that a use like we're proposing with 1 office with 1 bathroom is a use that can work with these physical limitations of the property. Any higher uses that people want to put the property to that would have larger wastewater flows probably are going to be limited on the property. But to be completely honest with you, which I always will do, that isn't the basis for our request. Our request isn't based on physical limitations of the property. It's based on the fact that the regulations prohibit some uses that are being made of storage facilities that need these variances to be able to be accommodated. That is the larger uses where a whole household of furniture needs to be stored in a unit. So you need a larger unit, or you got to rent 2 units. So that's one example. Another one is an RV or a camper or boats, things of that nature. Item number 2, staff states the condition upon which the variants are being requested would be applicable generally to other properties within the same district. I disagree with that in that as I understand the work that you do as a board, when you grant a variance, it's specific to that piece of property and isn't transferable to another piece of property. I didn't ask for a text amendment that would affect all properties under this zone district. So I don't believe if you grant this, it would affect any other property zoned light industrial. The 5th item in the staff report is stated, hardships identified as the result of the applicant's desire to establish storage units greater than 500 square feet and wishes to develop the property in a manner that exceeds the 50% maximum lot coverage standard. That's correct. That's basically restating what we asked for. So we agree with that. So let me try to give you more details on that request. First of all, the 500 square foot. We're proposing 180 units on the site. The smallest unit would be 12 by 35, which is 420 square feet. That unit is permitted within the 500 square foot limit. We're proposing units that are 12 by 40. Those are 480 square feet. They're permitted. We're proposing a larger unit that's 14 by 45. That is 630 square feet. And then the largest unit is 14 by 50, which is 700 square feet. These 2 larger units are for these larger uses that I have already identified. A whole house full of furniture, or a small business that wants to put their dead files in it, or put some supplies or unused furniture. Oftentimes these require a little bit more than 500 square feet, or they got to rent multiple units. And then again, the RV storage and the boat storage. The second request dealing with an increase in the lot coverage. The lot coverage, according to your regulations, includes the building area and all of the paved area. Oftentimes in other jurisdictions where I work, the lot coverage is only the building area. The reason for the request, that what's permitted is 50% lot coverage. We're asking for 64%, which is an increase of 14%. That increase is the increase in the roadway from basically a 30-foot wide drive between the storage units up to 70 to 80 foot to allow maneuvering room to maneuver an RV or a boat to back it into a storage unit. So that's what that increase is. During the process of pre-application meeting, we were asked to add a turnaround at the front of the project so that if someone changes their mind and don't want to go through the security gate, they have a way to exit out without backing out into the street. That extra payment increased the coverage some, so that's the way I would define that request. Then the last item was item number 6. The variance, staff finds that the reasonable use of the land is not hindered based on the existing conditions and that the request fails to meet the criteria. It's true, it's not because of physical limitations to the property or conditions of the property, but it's not true when you look at RV storage and boat storage and larger needs. You just can't put them in these units when you only have them 30 feet apart and they're less than 500 square feet. So what I would like to do is give you a picture of that to help you see my point. Mr. Chairman, may I pass this out?
Can I ask a question before you? All right. I understand that you're disagreeing on 4 comments that staff has made. Okay. Have you spoken back with staff on your disagreements with them after they initiated the comments after the review?
No, I haven't, and that, in my practice, I've been doing this over 40 years, I've never done that.
Well,
The staff-
I would think, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself only. I would think if I had a disagreement with the comments that were made, something I submitted to staff, I think I would go back to the staff and try to figure out where they were at before, and I would show my side of where I thought I was at before coming up here. I mean, because I'll be honest with you, I'm going to listen to staff, and right now staff is telling me that there's 4, that you're all not meeting all the requirements. And I wish you would go back and do that with staff. And I just think, I think I just heard you say on number 5, that you actually agreed with staff's comments on number 5, but then you turned around and said you disagreed. So I'm a little confused.
I am too. Item number 5 is a restatement of what I asked for.
Yeah.
So
that's what, so that leads me back to where I started. If I was you, I believe I'd go back to staff and table this tonight and go back to staff and discuss your concerns with what their findings are, is kind of where I'm at. Because I'll be honest with you, right now, they're telling us that it doesn't meet it, and I'm just giving you some advice.
I'm happy to do that. The way the process generally works, and I'm not faulting staff for this at all because they have an unbelievable workload, but I got the report last night, and I doubt if staff had time, and I didn't have time either for a meeting today. Generally, these things are presented to this board when it's this type of item. If it's a planning commission item, it's presented to the planning commission board. If you want me to do that, I'm happy to do that. I would like to go ahead and give you the picture that I wanted to give you that kind of identifies what I'm talking about a little bit better. But if it's the wishes of this board for me to defer this item and work with staff more, I'm telling you right now, I'll do that if that's the consensus.
That is your decision to make as an applicant. I'm just telling you my one man's opinion. If it was me, that's what I'd do. But you can carry on and continue as you like if that's your decision.
I'd like to go ahead and pass the pictures out and explain them.
I don't think the map's going to make any difference, but let me have them up here, please. We'll see that they get to everybody.
Danielle has
Jerry,
something to
go
say.
ahead.
Yeah, I want to address the fact he did just get the staff report last night. The address that was placed on the application, we use for correspondence, and it was returned to us. And as soon as the envelope came back returned to sender, we called the number on the application and asked for their email address and sent it to them. So, just so the staff report was sent out. Oh my goodness, on 7/29, but it was returned to us, we received it yesterday, and it was returned to sender. Okay.
So, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's 55 of the of the 184 units are going to be 700 square foot, correct?
There's 54 that are 700 square foot on the revised plan that we revised for staff and resubmitted, I think, yesterday or day before,
Okay.
that are 700, and there's 44 that are 630.
Just for a math lesson to me, if you're covering 64% of the, why don't you cut some units down and you don't have to meet, and you can meet the 50%? Why do you insist on it being 64%, which is non-compliant? I mean, we have we have the rules for this type of development. So why would you apply for something that you know doesn't comply?
That's a very good question. It deserves an answer. The photographs that I've handed out, I'm going to use those to answer that question. So the photograph on the there's 3 photographs. On the cover on the top, this is a photograph, an aerial photograph of the storage facility just to the left of this site. So on this photograph, you can see between the buildings a narrow drive area that's generally in the design of these facilities. The ones I've designed that are like this, I put that 30 feet wide. I would think this is probably in that neighborhood of 30 feet wide. You can see spread around on the site are a lot of RVs and boats and campers that are just setting out on the site. The reason for that is those will not fit in these smaller units, and if the unit was large enough to hold it in a 30-foot wide area, you can't maneuver the boat or the RV into the unit. That's why we need 70 or 80 feet. So with that extra payment, the difference between 30-foot of payment and the 70 or 80 foot of payment I submitted is a difference in the lot coverage ratio without changing the building square footage. I'm going from 48% to 64%. So the difference is basically the extra payment. If you look at the second picture in the packet, that is a street view from Jefferson Pike looking at the RVs and the campers and the boats that are stored on that facility. And then the third one is another street view on the other end. So why did we ask for the variance? We asked for the variance in order to have the site configuration and the size to take all of these units and put them inside a unit, to have maneuvering room to do it and to have the space in the unit to do it. We believe this is unsightly. It isn't protecting these vehicles from the weather. By doing a little bit larger unit and having more payment to maneuver into the unit, it can be protected from the weather. It can be totally enclosed. It'll have doors that would lock, and then you would have none of these on site. So that's why I'm asking for it. We believe it would be better for the community. It serves a need in the community. There are a lot of people that have these type vehicles that need a place to store them that's secured and out of the weather, and that's why we ask for it. The regulations, if we don't get a variance, you'll get another project just like this, that looks like this. We're trying to give you an upscale project that looks better, that's not unsightly like this. That's why. If you don't want this, then don't grant the variance. And if you don't want this look, grant the variance and we'll give you one that has everything enclosed. If this is what you want, then don't grant it, and this is what we'll have to do.
Renee, do you have a question?
Does your owner?
Not that I'm aware of. I didn't realize it was for sale. If it's for sale, I'll pass it on to them, and they can look into it. Is that the reason for your comment, that it's?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if these are related properties.
No, they're not.
Okay.
No.
On page 2, all the outside storage of campers and such, is that on the current vacant property?
No, that's
That's on the property of the first page.
If you look on the front page,
Yeah.
look to the left side of the photograph, you see all of those vehicles that are parked there.
Right.
This is a street view of all those that are parked.
Okay, and on the third page, I don't know if this is the land of the current existing storage unit or what, but the tractor trailers that are stored right there, is that have anything to do with this owner or this developer?
No, this again, on the front page, if you look on the right side, you see all of those RVs and boats that are parked on the very right side.
Right.
The third page is a street view of those. So it's what's on the existing facility on the left side of this property where we've proposed this project.
Our own board rules say that if it doesn't meet the criteria and it's self-created, we can't approve it. Can you not redraw it where it is compliant?
I cannot redraw it to where I can store RVs and boats inside units that your rules allow.
Even if you cut 2 buildings off of it?
I've got to have larger than 500 square foot buildings for the larger RVs and the boats, and I've got to have room, more pavement, in order to turn that RV and back it into a unit. In order to have that more pavement, I'm going to exceed the 50% lot coverage. Now, I can design a facility just like this one and not have inside storage and park it on the outside, but we were trying to do something better that looked better in the county.
Did you consider drawing a drive-through where you do not have to have so much real estate in order to just pull in and pull out?
I did consider that, and it doesn't reduce the amount of pavement because I've got to turn on one side and get lined up to pull in, and when I pull out the back, I've got to have a turning radius then to turn that RV and get back in the traffic lane. I can't do that in 30 feet. I need 60 to 70 feet to maneuver that RV into a 14-foot wide storage unit and then out of it.
It sounds like they have grander ideas than what the property is available for.
Well, it's grander ideas from what the regulations will allow, and that's why you're seeing these type of projects throughout the county, and that's why you're seeing people parking them in their yard, because there's not a facility in the county under these regulations that can accommodate it inside. And if it's this board's desire to not allow that to happen.
Well, it's not this board, it's the regulations that are currently on the books. It's not, we are just enforcing what's on the books. It's not anything of what we want. It's what the county has already put in front of us, black and white. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand.
Okay. We're
And-
just implementing the procedures. We didn't write them.
Right. But I understand also, and in over 40 years of doing this type of work, in front of many boards like this one and several jurisdictions, that the reason for a zoning board of appeals is to grant variances if they determine.
This is 14%.
It is 14%.
This is not just 5 feet over the line we're talking about.
Right.
This is considerable amount of pavement. You've got water runoff. Where is it going to go to?
Water-
All of that water's hitting that pavement. Where's it going to go?
Water will go to a detention pond that's designed on the back of the property on an easement that was established before this lot was created.
Is it only established for the septic, or can it be used for retention?
Well, there's 2 separate sites with 2 separate easements. One easement is for the septic, and the other easement is for detention.
And how far do you have to have a septic system away from that retention pond?
I think 25 feet is what.
And how much do you have?
I have more than that. I didn't establish those easements.
Right.
They were done before the plat was approved that created the lot.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. You may be, let me ask you a couple of things here.
Yes, sir.
Do you own this land yourself?
No, I'm the engineer.
Okay.
Giant
So
garages.
you're representing,
I represent Giant Garages,
Okay.
yes, sir.
If it's approved, what would be the startup date? Do you have that?
Well, I don't have the date, but as soon as able to obtain the review and the approval of the Planning Commission and the Engineering Department, and then we get the Health Department approval on the septic system, then they're ready to start work. So I would say within 3, 4 to 6 months would
Okay.
be the timing on that.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. You may be seated now.
Mr. Chairman, may
Yeah.
I also say that if it's the consensus of this board not to approve this, could I just withdraw it or defer it?
Up to this staff. I don't know that, I don't know that we can do that.
I think that the applicant is permitted to withdraw an application if you wanted to. You could also ask to defer it, but I don't think that it could be unilaterally just deferred by you. It'd have to be by a motion of the board on it. And just keep in mind that if there is a denial, there's a 6-month waiting period before it can be brought back. So I don't know if this is something that, as Mr. Farley had said, might be good for him to talk with staff. To me, it sounds more like if the regulations don't allow for this to happen, I don't know if there needs to be an amendment to the regulations themselves to allow for something like this to occur. A variance here, I'm not so, if it doesn't meet the requirements of it, you can't act outside your jurisdiction here as the BZA to grant him something that if he doesn't comply with the regulations on it. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I mean, you've got everybody here, and it might be wise to at least open it up for a public hearing, allow that to occur, and then if the applicant wants to withdraw, he can, or there can be a motion from the floor to defer it, or any other motion that the board likes.
Yeah, I would suggest you withdraw this and meet with our staff to see if you can't work out some of these.
I'd like to add that there is some discussion about amending the zoning ordinance because we are seeing a large number of people coming in and asking about these types of facilities. I mean, the one next door has been in place for years. But with the types of subdivisions that we're approving with the smaller lot sizes, people aren't able to have their RVs and boats on their lot, and so we are okay with maybe 750 square feet, but it'll take a few months to amend the ordinance to allow for that.
Mr. Chairman, I think I will take the wise advice of Mr. Farley and ask to either defer or withdraw so I can meet with staff and work with staff more.
Okay, you want to defer this till next month?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion that we defer until next month.
I second.
The public hearing, we didn't.
Yeah, we will, but,
And I think what you're trying to do is great. We just got to get it going the right direction.
Right.
Okay.
all
Thank
right,
you.
before we vote on this, we got to have a public hearing, okay? I mean, see if the public wants to say anything on this. We'll open this for a public hearing at this time. Close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second that it be deferred. Call a roll, please.
Okay, there was a lot going on. So who made the motion
Gary?
and second? Okay. Mike Curtis,
Yes.
Amber Brown, Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Renee Curtis,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes. The next item we have is a special exemption for an accessory before the principal structure. That's one request. Then the second is a variance relief for front yard setback. And how much is that, the setback?
The front yard setback, I believe it's just a few feet. Let's see.
For it, but I didn't find it.
Normally, I would put that on it. I apologize. I didn't. But,
That's all right. We'll go
okay.
ahead.
Application 2022-19 involves the property at Tulip Hill Drive, 2109, and it's a request for special exception for the establishment of an accessory before the principal structure and variance relief for the accessory structure from the 40-foot front yard setback for a property located in the RM zone. And this is the property in question. The applicant has been going through the process of subdividing the property into 3 lots. Now, the site in its current state has 2 existing homes on the property, so when the subdivision is recorded, it will have a large vacant lot and homes on their own lots. The structure in question, and these 2 requests go hand in hand, has been on the property for many, many years. And during the platting process, staff always asks, when you create a vacant lot and it has an existing structure, if it's legitimately agricultural, they can just label it as such, but when the applicant was asked if it was being used for agricultural purposes, he indicated that it did not meet that criteria. So he was advised that he could either remove the structure or apply for a variance and special exception. So the structure is already located within the 40-foot front yard setback, and it's well off of the road, as you can see. And we recently saw a request, not even like 2 months ago, in the same situation. And that one, the structure had been built in 2020 without a permit. The distinction from that case is that this structure has been in place and was used as a barn at one point, but is no longer being used as a barn. So this is the site in question. Now, the plat was very busy because you have existing structures and detached accessory structures, but this home that's located on Lot 3 actually received a variance back in 2002 to be 8.9 feet off of the property line. And this is the second house that will be located on its own lot. And then you have the larger vacant lot. And this is the surrounding area. We did receive 1 phone call regarding this. It was informational. They did not indicate whether or not they were in favor or in opposition of the request. And this is the proposed plat. Now, you see the 2 homes on the property, and then he's going to create a larger vacant lot with his intentions to sell, and a home would be constructed on the property. So it is a self-created hardship because of the subdivision plat. And it fails to meet all of the criteria for variance approval, but should the board decide to approve this request, both request the variance and the accessory before the principal, we did recommend some conditions in the staff report, but the second condition about the applicant obtaining a building permit for the structure in question, we would not require them to get a building permit because the structure has been there for decades. And that concludes our presentation.
Do we have anyone here representing us? Who'll come forward, please? Give us your name and any additional information you'd like to share.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time. My name is Jeff Adams, and it's a little bit of an awkward property, and so a couple of clarifications. The house was an old farmhouse. I purchased it about a year ago, my wife and I, and we, put $50,000 to get it up to par, and the tax records say it was built in 1911, and this barn, I don't know when it was built, but it's been there a long time. It's been sided and such. It's not hurting anybody around it. Everybody around the area has a storage barn or building, bigger, smaller. There's no kind of neighborhood regulations or anything like that. And then just the variance, the amount that it's going on to the other property is 10 feet, so I think you're supposed to have 40 feet, and it's 10 feet over onto that property. And the property it's over onto will belong to me because I'm going to keep the 2 houses that are there, and so it just, you know, again, it belonged to that house. This barn belonged to that house for all these years, and so, yeah, we're just asking to be able to keep it there. We may sell the property, we may keep the property and put a house on it. We're not for sure yet, but it's a perfectly good storage building, perfectly safe, and again, it's nothing new. It's been there a long time. So, questions?
Any question?
So I'll go back to it. The only reason that it's a problem is because it's a created problem. It's not a problem now, correct?
The structure is currently compliant in the existing condition.
And the only reason that we're hearing it is because he wants to sell the property.
Because he would like to subdivide the property, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing. Entertain a motion.
I have an additional question for staff, please. If Lot 2's boundaries were extended to include the structure in question, would everything be in compliance?
I think the configuration was based on the soil locations, and so they needed a certain amount of soils to support whatever number of bedrooms they wanted that lot to be able to establish. And what they did, why it's oddly configured, is because they were subdividing the property, they were working with 2 existing septic systems, and they had to provide backup areas for those 2 existing sites. And so I think that would have been considered in the design of it. Of course, they could extend the line back, but I'm assuming there's a reason that they configured it this way, and it was probably because they wanted a certain amount of area to allow for the number of bedrooms, to make it a buildable site.
My point on this is they've already gone to great lengths to make this subdivision plat very convoluted and busy. To extend the property boundary of Lot 2 back to encompass the structure with 5-foot setbacks on either side to meet the current zoning requirements is pretty minuscule compared to what they've done already. That's just my point.
That's a good point. And you probably would get a better answer from the applicant as to why it was configured that way.
I don't particularly like these flagged lots, but
Yeah, they're allowed.
yeah,
So.
it creates some problems. But anyway, that's all right. A motion?
I don't think we had public hearing.
I thought we
Oh,
just
did we?
did.
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you. And I closed it. No one spoke. Public.
And I'm, from what Michael just talked about, would the applicant want to address what Mr. Curtis just brought up? If that fixes it.
Yes, I think that would fix it, actually. I think it's.
Go ahead.
I'm brand new at this, and so I think if you look at the flag there and I might be wrong, Danielle, but those 2 lines I think might be enough soil to have the one septic and the backup septic. I'm not sure that we need that. I'm not sure we thought of it because this issue didn't come up until late in the process, actually, that the barn was offset. So I think that might be a brilliant idea that we didn't think of.
And I'm going to give you the same advice I just gave the previous gentleman.
Sure.
You can take it or leave it. Because technically, like Mr. Sartain said earlier, if it does not meet our guidelines, technically, we usually don't approve them.
Okay. No, and respectfully, I have been working with them, and they recommended that you all approve this, I think, in the notes with 2.
It talks about it meets most of the requirements.
Right. Okay.
Most is not all of them.
Okay.
I'm just, you can take it or leave it. It's freely advised.
No, I've been going on their advice. Let me ask you this, because I'm a little unclear. So there's two things I'm trying to get approved here. One is to leave the building, and one is to allow the setback. But when it comes to leaving the building, technically it's against the rules, but my understanding is that I come to you all to get an exception to that rule. Is that correct? Like they're not going to make an exception to that rule. You all have to make an exception.
If it's self-inflicted,
Yeah,
we usually don't.
okay.
I don't. I just speak for myself.
If I could just build on that point. So it's, and Danielle, please correct me, but it seems that one is kind of conditioned on the other. I mean, you technically might meet the requirements, and they still have to approve it for special exception to allow your accessory dwelling to be there prior to building a home.
Right.
But if it doesn't meet the requirements for variance, then that's a moot point. So you've got to have both approvals. And I think what Mr. Farley is suggesting here is if there's an alternative here to where you wouldn't even need to come to this board for a variance, that might allow you to do what you need to do. So he's probably suggesting you might defer it and see if you can figure that out. And if that can be done, this can be their plat can be configured, and then you'd be back here only on the first request, which is a special exception approval to have this accessory dwelling prior to building your home.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm asking, though. You all could possibly approve that exception, right?
Well, that would be the board's pleasure, and they
Right.
probably wouldn't want to vote upon that unless you're wanting them to tonight, and they're probably, I would think, it's conditioned, one's kind of conditioned on the other, so you might understand which way they're going to go if you don't meet the variance.
No, I'll try to get the variance fixed first.
And then I would consult with staff. If they're going to defer it tonight, I would consult with staff in the interim.
Also, if they redraw that lot line for Lot 2 to enclose that accessory structure with just 5-foot setbacks, they wouldn't need to be here at all.
That'd be a question more for Danielle, but that might be the case, so.
I'm surprised that it wasn't investigated by the surveyor to begin with. That's why I'm assuming it's all because of the soil sites, but
That's why. I mean, this guy went out, surveyor did it. He's got to leave so much dirt for that soil site. You might have as much land as you're going to get, honestly.
Okay.
But I don't know that. I'm not a soil surveyor.
right, I mean, that's something that you would want to reach out to your surveyor and
Okay.
say, because I can't really answer about the soil situation.
What if this line can only go up so far?
Now, you can make a motion on this, and
I just want to be fair
provided
to,
this is corrected, okay? It's done.
I just want to be fair to the applicant, and the reason I even brought it up, the guys didn't come back up here after Mike brought it up. You know, it might be worth the 30 days to defer it, if it's up to you, and meet with staff to kind of figure this out. To say, then again, it may be that you don't have enough soil.
Right.
It might be worth 30 days to find out.
Okay, yeah, I'll go for that.
You're good with that?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we defer for 30 days.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on this? Call a roll, please.
The other way we could do it is to hear the two of them separately.
Yeah, you could vote on them separately, two different motions.
I think so. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Danielle, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the two are kind of conditioned on the other. And so if you're going to defer the variance portion of it, it kind of makes sense to me to defer the special exception approval as well, because you don't have before you for your consideration whether he even needs the special exception approval. So I think Mr. Farley's motion to just defer the whole application probably the most appropriate thing to do.
Call a roll, please.
Mike Curtis,
Yes.
Amber Brown, Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Renee Curtis, Zane Cantrell.
All right. The next item is a request by Brenda Lee Reed, who is requesting a special exemption. This is for bed and breakfast. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. BZA 2022, sorry. I didn't get the call to withdraw the third case until after I had placed the presentation on the drive, so ignore all of that. BZA 2022-21 involves the property at 6020 Lofton Road. They are seeking special exception approval for a bed and breakfast upon a property located in the RM zone. And currently, the site is approved, and in 2005, they got conditional use approval for a health and wellness facility. And in your staff report, we included all of the conditions that were part of that approval. And the applicant's not asking for any changes to that part of the use. But she would like to establish a bed and breakfast homestay within the existing residence. So it's located in a residential area. This is the result of discussions with the applicant. There had been some activities that took place on the site that were not permitted. The applicant was made aware of it. They came in and discussed it with staff. And then the desire to establish the bed and breakfast was born from those discussions. And she would like to offer 4 bedrooms, 4 overnight accommodations. There's a error in the staff report. And the applicant plans to make a living room and private porch available along with the access ramp to the occupants. This will be available 7 days a week, all throughout the year. She's not going to do any on-site cooking. She's just going to provide a coffee and tea station. She's not proposing any additional signage because the existing use already has a sign for the wellness facility, and so she found that it was not necessary. And that 2 to 4 employees would be on-site at any given time. So these are photos I'm scrolling through of the surrounding area. And she's not making any changes to the structure, but it will need to be inspected if it is approved. Also, as a result of this change of use, we did hear from CUD, and CUD indicated that because the use would now be considered commercial, they would be required to install a backflow device meeting CUD specifications. And that's something that the applicant would have to work with the building department and our department to make sure that that is met. And we found that the request met the criteria for a bed and breakfast homestay. She resides at the property. There's ample parking on the site. She's only providing 4 guest rooms. She's limiting meal service to just breakfast, muffins and tea. She's going to she states that she will comply with the standard that they're limited to 14 consecutive days and stays, and then the last one already discussed, she'll have to meet the International Building Code, and she'll have to have an inspection performed before she can establish the use. So we found that she met the criteria for special exception, and that concludes our presentation.
Have anyone here representing this? If you'll come forward, please. Go ahead.
Danielle, in here it says it meets most of the general requirements. What requirements does it not meet?
Oh. Sorry, one kind of. Well, the adversely affect other property. Sometimes when you establish another use, it has the potential to affect neighboring properties, whether it's traffic or noise. Right now, we can't really measure it because the use hasn't been established, but every potential use has the.
Right. I just want to make sure clarification of what it didn't. So.
Go ahead and give us your name and any additional information you want to share.
The house currently right now has 9 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms, and it's kind of like a house that's been put together. It was moved out there, so there's a guest house is what I call it. So there's 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a private porch. And I do have a handicap ramp and a handicap room that is on the back side of the house. So that's the part of the house that I'm requesting that we use as a bed and breakfast, which is the back facing the pool. If that's a little bit.
So it's 2 separate houses?
No, it's one house, but I bought it this way, so it seems like there was something put together. It's not normal, but that's all I know.
Have you
That's
been
how I
out there,
bought it.
Tan?
Yeah, do you mind if I chime in
Okay.
a little bit? So as far as the code is concerned, there is 2 septic systems at this property. There is 9 bedrooms. The septic systems accommodate the 9 bedrooms. However, we discussed this in a meeting. To qualify for a bed and breakfast where it applies to the code and not require sprinklers, there's a max occupancy of the entire house. So the code requires that there be no more than 5 bedrooms, but also, in addition to that, not or, and there cannot be no more than 10 occupants in the home at any given time. So even though you've got 9 bedrooms and this health and wellness facility, and we talked about this at the meeting, you can't have a full house at the bed and breakfast and then also have guests that are utilizing the health and wellness facility, because the entire structure cannot have more than 10 occupants. Otherwise, sprinklers would, the threshold for sprinklers would kick in.
Right.
Well, you answered exactly where I was heading, and why I started talking about, is it 2 or is it 1? So are you going to have both businesses going at the same time?
Well, mostly my health and wellness is in the winter, and most of the rental is in the summer. So I've been doing Airbnb and vacation rental. So that's how I rent my entire house out, and it's a 6-night minimum. So I've been doing that for 6 years. And the problem that I have encountered now, twice, I've rented. So let's say you find me on Verbo, and you rent my home, and you put your name in Gary, and I'm going to have, my whole family come for a family reunion. I only know that what you say in that ad as requesting that you're telling me the truth.
Right, but it's up to you as the property owner to make sure that it meets the guidelines.
No, I cannot
Yes, ma'am.
have any contact with these people until, through Airbnb and vacation rental, like we can't talk. You're renting through a site.
I know, but it's still your responsibility to make sure that it meets the guidelines set up and it meets the code that you to follow.
Now, I understand what you're saying. This is, go back to my problem. It's been really good, normal people, until somebody rented and it was a party. And there was like 500 or 600 people came to the house. I called the police and trying to get them to help me get them off of the property. I mean, I'm only can do what I can do. I'm one person, but I don't want that to happen. So that is why I'm asking for a bed and breakfast, and maybe I can just do it on a smaller, scale.
But go back to my first question. Are you going to be having the bed and breakfast and your health and wellness to be going on at the same time at any time during the year?
I don't know. I've never done it before, so
Okay.
I take care of maybe one patient at a time. So if I have, and mostly I've been doing that in-home, like, in-home care.
Ms. Reed, so in order to avoid having to install sprinklers in the home,
Right.
you must maintain less than 10 occupants at any
That's
given
not a
time.
problem. Yes.
So, and Gary, the
Yes.
Airbnb, when she Airbnbs the entire house out to one person, that is completely different from a bed and breakfast. A bed and breakfast is when they rent different rooms out to different people. And there's also a stipulation in the code that the the bed and breakfast has to be owner occupied. So you have to be on site.
Right.
If you rent these rooms out to individual
I live there
persons. If you rent a home out using Airbnb, you can rent your entire home out. Anybody can do that. And the same rule doesn't apply unless that Airbnb person decides or the person that Airbnbs decides to rent the rooms out separately. Then it becomes a problem.
Well, what they did was have a party without telling me. There was no contract or anything, and it was, I mean, I didn't know until all these cars start pulling up. So I just want to prevent this. It disturbed the neighbors. I don't blame them. I have gone over and talked to everybody, and I said, this will not happen. Again, I mean, I didn't approve it. It's just something that did happen, and that's why I'm trying to switch it around, because I just don't want to deal with it. Sure. That's why I'm here.
Do you have a question? Renee? Amber? No. Mike? Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. You'll come around, please.
I'm Cindy Ducker Brindley. I live right down the street. I'm speaking on behalf of the neighbors and of 3 other households too. I am 3 houses down on Thompson Farms, and I'm also speaking for the house that's straight across from the driveway and the 3 down Thompson Farm. First of all, we weren't aware that the health and wellness was still going on at all. I was under the impression that that had ended a long time ago. That the party she's talking about was the worst night I have ever endured in my life. There were 500, 600 cars. It was like 12 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. It was like a horrible movie of people and just constant. There were 2 men fighting in my front yard. I found out later that on down into the neighborhood, people were driving back there and parking and doing drugs in other people's front yards. I had to call 911 twice. I have children. I have 3 children that were 10, 11 years old, and I was terrified. I do not believe that she didn't know. Another neighbor had saw where this party was advertised like up at the store down the street. What I understand, she posted it on Famous Last Cast's Facebook page. So she was very well aware. She did 3 or 4 Facebook Live videos during the party, showing, hey, we're having a big party and come on out. And she was obviously partying with these people. There were 500 or 600 20-something-year-olds in this party. You could see drug paraphernalia on tables on her videos. She was not unaware whatsoever. She was not telling them to leave. In one part of the video, she's saying, oh, I don't know where all these people are parking. I'll tell you where they were parking. They were parking all down our street and in our yards. Let me see. So I wanted to make sure I said everything, because nobody else could come. They had to work and couldn't get there. The next morning, I texted her and said, what was that? I can't believe you've done this to us. And she said she would meet with us. Actually, she told another neighbor she would meet with us at noon. And so 3 houses of us walked over there to meet her at noon, and she wasn't there. There were all these people passed out in her house and whatever. I texted and said, where are you? She said, I'm almost there, whatever, I'll meet you all later. We wound up not getting she didn't get back with us. She did get back with me later that night, and I said that I was exposed to COVID. This was in 2021, or 2020, Halloween night 2020. She said that she was so embarrassed that she didn't know this was going to happen, and again, it had been advertised everywhere. She said that she didn't want to have a problem with the neighbors. She would get back with us, and she said she's talked to her neighbors, and she has not. She's not ever gotten back with anybody apologizing or trying to make amends, nothing. There have been other parties since then. I don't know I don't know about renting for an Airbnb, but like I say, she was there. She was there during the whole thing. She has since, like I say, had more parties. You can see people at the end of the driveway taking money. So it's clearly not an Airbnb for a family. And, you know, lots and lots of people coming in and out. From my understanding, back in 2021, or 2011, when I moved in, and she had the health and wellness, it was my understanding that she was doing some procedures and things that she wasn't licensed for. Was that right? I think, did we talk about that at some point?
I don't recall having a conversation like that with anybody.
Okay, I don't have verification on that, but that was my understanding that was happening. There's been ever since I've been there since 2011, it's been this kind of thing. It's that she's having renting her house out. She even said in a text to me that morning after the party, she admitted that there were 500 people there, and it said, quote, "I do family reunions, weddings, and small events." She had no kind of use for that at the time at all. That, I think she had been told before that had even happened that she couldn't do that, but was still openly doing it.
Let's see if anybody has any questions for you, okay? Do we have any questions? You pretty well stated your case. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. You may be seated now.
Okay, can I just say that our concern is that there's been years of non-compliance and not being concerned about the neighbors. And we don't have any, think of the word, I have it on my...
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing. Wait just a minute. We'll close the public hearing. Have any more comments from the board? Have a motion on it?
I'm going to make a motion that we deny the request, and based on that it's, what was the language you said a while ago, Danielle, about that it met most of the requirements, and you detrimental to the adverse effect to the neighbors. Based on that, I believe that would be an adverse effect on the neighborhood. Based on the testimony that I've heard here tonight, I sincerely believe the last person, based on Ms. Reed, could not give me the information to answer the questions that I felt I answered, or I asked. So that's my reason for the motion to deny.
State your motion again, please.
That we deny the request based on it as adversely affecting the neighborhood.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mike Curtis,
Yes.
Amber Brown,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Renee Curtis,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes. Is there any other business? No. Mr. Attorney, do you have any business? No, sir. We are adjourned. Thank you.